Okay. So we are friends for a very long time. Our parents grew up together. We went to the same high school. You're a couple of years younger than me. Tell me, you know what, I'll just start with a specific question here that I haven't gotten a real clear answer out of anybody. When you're going to buy dope, where do you go?
Well, when I was doing it, I lived in Wallingford at the time, so I went to New Haven, just because New Haven was the closest to get it. I mean, it's not the best, but, you know, nobody wants to be dope sick and have to drive to the Bronx or, 2 hours away. I mean, ideally, that's where you would go, would be the Bronx. I mean, that's kind of where everything comes in, and, it's the best there because it's not stepped on 20 times. By the time it comes into the Bronx from wherever it's coming from out of country, they get it. They're going to step on it a little bit.
What do they cut it with?
Everybody cuts it with something different. I mean, if you get, like, I remember one time when I started on methadone, they drug tested you. In the beginning, I didn't care if I was going to pee dirty or not. I had just done dope, and I got a urine test, and I showed up positive for ketamine. I showed up positive for benzos, which was Xanax, Klonopins, that kind of thing. So they cut it with anything they possibly can, just to make it more powder. I mean, they cut it with fentanyl. Fentanyl is a pain patch. It's a very strong opiate. So they can, it'll keep its, opiate feeling by cutting it with fentanyl, and it's cheaper. They don't need to use a lot of it.
Can you smoke fentanyl? Like, can you rip a patch open?
You used to be able to. I don't believe you can anymore. I don't think they make gel. It used to be a gel. You put it in tin foil, and then you would put like a straw in your mouth and you light it from the bottom.
Oh, right, like
That's
smoking speed.
Yeah, so
I witnessed that once.
That would be how you do that. But I always went to New Haven just because it was the closest. Depending on your dealer. I mean, I had somebody that I always went to, the same guy, so I knew the consistency of it.
Where do you go? What exit?
I went to right off State Street, down by like Humphreys. You know where Humphreys is? East Street?
Modern Pizza?
Yeah, Humphreys, and right where Humphreys is, it's East and State Street is where I met him all the time. But most of the time, if you don't have somebody to go to, you go to Fairhaven, right on Ferry Street, you could usually find anybody. It's not hard to find. It's honestly easier to find than I can find dope faster than I can find weed. It's a lot simpler.
And are who are these guys?
They're most of them are just unemployed dope dealers. That's all they do.
They're black guys.
Yeah. 99 out of 100 times. And sometimes they're Spanish. You get Spanish guys depending on what neighborhood you go to. But it's just so easy to find. It doesn't seem like it. Maybe for someone like you that hasn't done it, you haven't been into it. So, you'd think it would be hard to find, just because when you hear the word heroin, you think of,
where would I get that?
Yeah, exactly. It's not a common.
I think about that with peyote. Where would I get peyote?
It's a lot more prevalent than people think it is. A lot of people, just because they don't do it or they don't have an immediate family member affected by it, they don't think that it's everywhere. It is everywhere. It literally is. There's, I remember going to see, my guy, and there'd be 14, 15-year-old kids on bicycles coming there to get it. It's like, these are little kids.
What was your guy? Do you know the guy's name?
No, they all go by one-letter names.
Hey, I'm G.
D or whatever. They don't ever tell you their name. Just because they don't want anything.
Did you ever go to Hartford?
Yeah, Park on Park Ave or Park Street, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you can just kind of pull up, sit in the car, and somebody will come up to you. It's.
They come out of a house, or they're just walking?
Yeah, usually once you get to meet somebody, they'll just you call them when you're on your way, and they'll say just come here, park on whatever street, and call me when you get there. And you call them when you get there, and then they just come walking up behind the car, hop in, and that's it.
They hop in, and you gotta bring them for a fucking ride?
No, usually they just they just hop in real quick. You just tell them how many you need, and that's that.
How much?
When I was in New Haven, it was $80 a bundle. Depends on how good it is, though. It depends on, you know, if you're better off always. I mean, you're better off having a consistent person. Like if you have a dealer that's consistent, that's always around, that always has it. It's always the same price. You know, like the one guy I dealt with in New Haven, it was $80 a bundle every single time, and he was always around. You can call him basically anytime, and he was always there. You know, so when you go to, you know, outside areas, like you go to somewhere different, like say Providence, say you happen to be in Rhode Island, you know, you'll get there and, you know, they're not used to you, they don't know you, they'll try to charge you more, they'll charge you $100.
How do you know how to go to a new place? Like, how the fuck did you find the Bronx?
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. The first time I did it, I really didn't. Most people get introduced to it by a friend or, you know, someone you're hanging out with introduces you to heroin. So, you know, say I did oxys and you did heroin. Basically, I would try it because you're doing it, and then I would somehow end up with your connect that you deal with, and that's how you get introduced. But what happens is, you know, a lot of people don't have that happen. Like I always kind of did it on my own. I didn't have, you know, a ton of people around me doing it. My friends weren't doing it, so, you know, I had to figure everything out kind of on my own. So I actually Googled where to get it, and I went on Google, and
What?
you know, I could just
Siri, find me heroin. Well, there's a great place on State Street.
That's what I did, and you know, I didn't know how to do it either. Like, I mean, I started out sniffing it, but you know, once I wanted to inject it, I just Googled how to do it.
Wait, how did you cross that line?
How did I get to?
You just wanted it harder?
Well, what happens is it's just like anything else. You start out doing pills, and when you're doing pills, you know, like when I was doing oxys, I started out, I was only doing, you know, whatever it was, 140 a day. Well, then it became 240s a day, and then it became, you know, 280s a day, and it just kept getting higher and higher and higher.
What's the height of your oxy use if you were trying to like brag about it?
I was selling them and doing them, so that I could afford my habit. I was doing, usually on a regular basis, I was doing between 10 and 12 80s a day every day.
10 and 12 80s a day.
And then they stopped making Oxycontin, you know, in that form, and they became OPs, which they're a lot harder to. Basically, you can't do anything other than swallow them. You know, they have a gel in them, so you try
That's
to
right.
crush
You
it.
try to bring, yeah.
It just the gel, you know, mixes with the powder and it ruins it. It basically makes it so you cannot do it. So I wasn't going to do those, you know, because I couldn't at the time. I was sniffing them, and it just didn't give me the same feeling when I swallowed a pill. You know, you get addicted to sniffing it. You know, that's just part of the
ritual.
Of the addiction. Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, and it hits you faster too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So then I ended up at that point switching to dope, and that's when, you know, I started sniffing the dope, and I was with somebody else, and they shot it, and I watched them as they did it, and just the look on their face when it hits them, I was like instantly in love. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta try
I
this.
want that.
Exactly, like, you know, you see like instantly as soon as they, you know, when you tie off your arms so the veins will pop out and you shoot it, and then you take the tie off and then it rushes through your vein. So I saw it and I was just like, oh my God, I'm like, I gotta try this. I'm like, this looks great. I said, you know, it hits them faster. I said, it hits them a lot harder. I said, I gotta try this. I said, you know, that looks great. So then I asked him how to do it, and he did it for me, and the instant that I undid the tie, I got this crazy rush that went to my head. I was just like all hot, and you know, it felt like I had these like pins and needles in my whole body. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, this is amazing, you know. And then right there, it was just, I knew I loved it, you know, and that was like the line that I wish I'd never crossed, because once you do that, you'll never go back. You'll never sniff anything ever again. You know, after I did it, I knew I was in trouble because I knew I loved it. And you know, the first time I'd ever felt that same kind of a feeling, I was like 11 years old, and I broke my arm in a dirt bike accident, and I got prescribed Darvocet, which is like a weak opiate. you know, it's for
11 years old.
yeah, 11, 12 years old. Yeah, I got prescribed Darvocet, which is basically one of the weakest opiate painkillers you can get. You know, it's kind of what they would give you if you're 12 years old because it's pretty weak.
Yeah.
At 11 or 12 years old, the first time I took it, is this bright orangish, you know, pill. I took it, and I knew I was in love immediately. At 11, 12 years old, I knew I loved this feeling. You know, I knew at that point, at that age, that I had a problem already. You know, I knew that I wasn't going to want to stop. The first time I took it, I knew it was going to be a problem. You know, and you know that's a young age to think that. And most people at 11 or 12 years old, you know, the last thing on your mind is drug addiction. You know, I mean, I wasn't thinking, you know, I'm going to be a heroin addict for the rest of my life when that happened, but you know.
They didn't talk about that in DARE, did they?
No, they didn't tell me about that.
Yeah,
you know,
the DARE program.
And you know, it was like, from that point on, you know, once I finished the bottle of pills, they gave me, I don't know, maybe like 30 of them, you know, 'cause I broke my arm in like 2 or 3 spots, so it was a pretty serious injury. It wasn't like, you know, a little bruise on my arm. I mean, I was hurting, but the thing about it is, like, the painkillers didn't do anything for the pain. You know, all they did was make me high and not think about the pain. You know, so the fact was, like, I knew I liked it, number one. Number two, I knew this was probably going to become a problem. And once the bottle ran out at, you know, whatever it was, you know, a month later, I knew I wanted more. You know, I was only 11 or 12 years old at the time, which, you know, that was kind of a scary thought, like knowing that I like this that much, that in my mind I was kind of thinking, like, you know, where can I get more of these things, you know? And, you know, at that point, it was kind of a normal thing for every family on the block. Somebody in the family's got some kind of pain problem. You know, most houses have some kind of pain medication in the medicine cabinet.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, most people, you can go into their medicine cabinet, and you know, nobody's thinking their kid's going to be a drug addict at that age. So, you know, it was normal for people back then to leave. You know, if you had a bottle of Percocet 5s or
That wouldn't
whatever.
last 2 seconds
No,
around here anymore.
no. And
Someone broke into my apartment in Los Angeles when I got my wisdom teeth out
sold
and
Vicodin?
took the bottle
yeah,
of Vicodin. That's all they took. I had awesome shit everywhere.
that was an inside job, I think.
yeah, I think so too.
Well, needless to say, I wasn't in LA at that time. You know, so then, you know, it kind of just progressed from there. You know, I mean, I went a few years obviously without doing them. You know, just because, you know, I mean, I was still a kid. I had other things going on, so I wasn't at the point where I was going to start robbing and stealing to get more Darvocet. You know, so it just so happened that, you know, a few years later in high school, I ended up injuring my shoulder real bad and had surgery, and I got pins in there, and you know.
Oh, you must be fun to go to the airport with.
It doesn't go off, but I got surgery. Actually, I got 2 surgeries, and they had to cut through my my armpit here, and they cut across the top.
Is there a scar?
Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So when I got that, I was given I don't know, perk 10s they started me with. I was 14 at the time, and they just didn't do anything.
I remember that.
You know, so then I ended up getting stronger medication, and you know, then none of it was doing anything, just because, you know, I mean, it was a serious surgery, it hurt a lot, and you know, I just started buying them, you know, on the street, just because I can buy perk 30s at the time where, you know, they were like $7 or $8 a piece. You know, so at the time I could do 1 perk 30, and I would be, you know, I'd cut it in half, and I'd have, you know, half in the morning, half in the afternoon, and I'd be good all day. But within maybe, you know, maybe 2-3 weeks, you know, I needed more. The one that I was doing, or the half in the morning, half in the afternoon, wasn't doing anything. So, you know, I ended up buying 2, and then, you know, then it was 3, and so on and so forth. And you know, I was working for my family after school every day, and you know, so I had a paycheck every week, and you know, I was able to afford it for a while just because, you know, they were so cheap. But then all of a sudden prices started going up on them, and you know, they were harder to find, and
Why did the price go up?
at the time, you know, I really don't know. I just think because of the demand.
Yeah,
You know, everybody got into them. You know, like when I was in high school, you know, after you had graduated, you know, I was maybe a sophomore or junior. You know, the prices just kept going up and up and up and up, just because everybody knew there was such a demand. You know, everybody knew people needed these now, because now people hadn't been doing them for a year or two and they're all addicted. You know, so
What is the obsession with everybody kind of wanting to feel like and do this stuff?
you know, I don't think like people kind of don't think about that in the beginning. I think, you know, the main thing is like when I started doing it anyways, you know, I was in pain, so, you know, from my shoulder, so I did them, you know, and it just took my mind off of the pain. But, you know, I still had to, you know, go to school, and I still had to work, and, you know, my parents didn't know about any of this, so, you know, I never really did so much that I was, you know, drooling all over myself like some of these people you see. I did enough to kind of feel good, but get by without anybody knowing, you know, and I hid it from everybody for a really long time, because I was able to do, you know, enough to feel good, but not enough to make myself, you know, noticeable. You know, I knew I couldn't let anyone know what I was doing. So, you know, I just kind of did a little bit, you know, I did enough just to feel, you know, good. And that was it. I didn't do it to, you know, to be passed out on the couch or to be, you know, unconscious. You know, just, I did enough, and that was it. And, you know, after time, you know, I wasn't able to do one anymore. I had to do two, and then I had to do three, and then I had to do four, and then I got into oxys, because oxys were, you know, milligram to milligram, they were cheaper. You know, if I can buy an Oxy 80 for $45, or I can buy a Perk 30 for, you know, for $25, it's cheaper to buy the Oxy, and then I can just split the Oxy in 4 pieces, and I can, you know, take a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And, you know, then once I got into oxys, that was kind of a little different than Perks, because it's a much higher milligram. It feels a little bit different. You know, it feels, you know, it felt great. It just takes your mind off of everything. It takes your mind off any problem you have,
What kind of problems do you have?
Well, I mean, at the time I didn't really have much problems, but, you know, yeah, just stupid things that 16-year-old kids have, and, you know, it just made it so I didn't, it almost made it so so I was like emotionless, you know, which I liked. I didn't like feeling, you know, anything other than good feeling. I didn't like, you know, I didn't like ever being sad. I didn't like being down. I didn't like, you know, anything like that. I just wanted to be kind of, you know, emotionless, so I didn't have feelings, you know, just, you know, anything that made me feel anything other than happy, just, I didn't like it. You know, it was just, it got rid of everything. It got rid of any problems. It got rid of any, you know, any like upsetting things I had. You know, like, you know, I was kind of like a real emotional kind of person, not like emotional in the sense where I was walking around like crying. And, you know, just, you know, I had anger problems. I got in a lot of fights, and, you know, it just, it calmed me down. It took, you know, it took that, you know, that edge off that, you know, I had. Like I would be at the point where, you know, like I just kind of would fight for no reason. You know, I was just getting, you know, somebody looked at me funny. I thought, you know, they were, you know, looking at me because they wanted to fight me, or they, you know, they had a problem with me.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, I've been there. I've seen it.
They, you know, they didn't, but, you know, it was another thing, like, you know, in high school, you know.
Listen, I didn't think you were a bully. I thought a lot of stuff I think you delivered a lot of justice that day. I want to add that for the record, please.
Yeah, you know, I didn't go around fighting, you know, just to make myself look like a tough guy, or, you know, a lot of times it was, you know, like I didn't like when, you know, I'd see like somebody that had, you know, some kind of learning disability or something, and people pick on them, and, you know, I didn't like that. It bothered me, you know, when, you know, I'd see a kid that has problems getting picked on by 3 kids from a football team that are 220 pounds, you know, that really pissed me off, you know. So, I kind of just put myself in a position where, you know, I get into a fight because I was trying to defend somebody that couldn't defend himself.
Probably all three of them.
Yeah. You know, so it was weird because you know, the opiates helped me to control my anger. You know, like it was like I just had this problem. Like it was like I wanted to fight people. Like I wanted to get in fights, which I don't think is very normal for a 16-year-old kid. You know, just walking around looking for problems. But
So I just want to note here that you come from a family that your parents are together and you have a brother, because it's a huge misconception that people using dope are like misfits, or like you know, their parents don't pay attention to them, or they live in the ghetto. You know, that's a huge misconception, at least with the area that we live in.
yeah.
I mean, every area has a ghetto,
Yeah.
but you know, and eventually your family knows about this. You went to rehab how many times?
At this point, I've been probably somewhere around 8, 9, and you know, 8 or 9 times that I actually stayed and went. I went to, I've been all over the country. I've been to rehabs in Connecticut. I've been to rehabs in Florida. I went to, you know, Oregon. You know, the problem's everywhere. It's not just here. It's not just in bad areas. It's in the wealthiest towns and cities in the country. People have this misconception, like, you know, that it's only for a certain group of people, and it's not. There's people that you would never expect in your life to do it. It's not just low class, you know, people that live in the ghetto. It's people that live in Greenwich have this problem. People that live in everywhere, because they all started, and not everybody, but the majority of people started with pain medication. Nobody just woke up one day and said, I want to be a heroin addict. You know, I mean, I know I didn't. I didn't wake up one day and say, this is what I want.
You know, it's kind of strange. You look at this thing and it's like the doctors are the drug dealers and it's too much. So then you go on the streets and you're buying heroin off the people of the streets, and then now they want you to go on the methadone program, so the money is going from the doctor to the streets, right back to the doctor again, or even to the state. Some people are, the state pays for methadone, right?
Well, some people, yeah, it depends on
Financial situation.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I started on methadone, I made too much money at the time, so I had to pay for my own. I was paying $70 a week for methadone. So it's like a sliding scale. It goes based upon your pay. So basically you have 90% of the people there are on state insurance and the state pays for it, which in turn means my $70 that I'm paying for me to go is realistically paying for other people to go. Basically, if you make more money, you in turn are now going to be basically paying for people that don't make as much money to go.
Yeah.
You know, which I understand that that's how, you know, it kind of needs to be, because there's a lot of people there that don't have jobs, that don't have money, that don't have anything. And, you know, there's a lot of homeless people there. There's people that don't have anything at all, and they have no means to pay for it, but they want to get better. You know, it's hard enough to get and stay clean when you have money. You know, when you have a good job, you have a good family that cares about you. It's hard enough to get and stay clean then, let alone when you have nothing. You have no family, you have no house, you're sleeping on a park bench. You don't have the money for methadone. So if there weren't people that had jobs and insurance to pay for it and kind of make up for the other portion of people that don't have insurance, good insurance, or money to pay, then they wouldn't stand a chance. It's, you know, like I said, it's hard enough to get and stay clean when you have the money.
Yeah.
You know, so,
right.
You know, like when I had gone, I remember the first thought when I went there, you know, I looked at some of these people and I said, you know, I said to myself, I said, oh, shit, I said, am I one of them? Like these people are here for the same thing. They were heroin addicts, and then they came to get methadone to get clean. And just looking at some of these people, I couldn't understand how they were in such rough shape. I mean, I mean, I know because I did it for a long time, but, you know, I always was able to, you know, kind of keep it hidden and, you know, keep myself, you know, I still kept myself, you know, clean, and I showered, and I, you know, because of the fact that I had to hide everything, you know, maybe that's why, but when I had seen people in the clinic, I couldn't understand, like, how could you be that, you know, that beat down? You know, like right when I had started, it was just, at the clinic when I had started, it was looking at some of these people, and I couldn't understand it, you know, it just, you know, I did the same thing they did, you know, I mean, trust me, I mean, I robbed, I stole, I did everything, you know, that I had to do to get it, but, you know, I still took care of myself somewhat,
Yeah.
you know, so, you know, it just, when I looked at the people at the clinic, I almost turned around and walked out and was like, maybe I don't want to do this, you know, but I knew, you know, if I didn't get on methadone, I didn't stand a chance, you know, because I had tried, I'd been to rehabs, I'd been to detoxes, I'd done it all, and none of it stopped me, you know, it's like rehab kind of made me a better drug addict than liars, what it did. You know, by going to rehab the first time I went to Mountainside in Connecticut, which is, you know, nice place, it's private, but I went there for oxys and, you know, for being addicted to Oxycontin, and I left there, you know, thinking about doing heroin, because that's all people do when you're in rehab. You just, everyone kind of sit around, everyone's telling their stories, and, it, you know, I heard all the stories about heroin, how good it felt and how great it was, and by the time I left there, I knew I had to try it. You know, I said, well, you know, I know I'm supposed to be quitting and staying clean, but you know, I can't quit before I try this, you know, which then I got out of there and, you know, eventually ended up trying it, but, you know, it was like it made it worse. It's like a vicious cycle. You know, I went to the doctor, you know, when I was younger, I prescribed pain medication, and then, you know, eventually you try to get clean, you go to rehab, you know, which is not cheap. You know, rehabs are very expensive.
How expensive?
Mountainside at the time, my parents had to pay for it. They don't take insurance. It was like $11,000 or $12,000 for the month, and it's got to be paid up front. You know, so you know that's kind of like a catch-22. You know, if I was a drug addict at the time, do you really think I have $11,000 or $12,000 to go to rehab? If I had $11,000 or $12,000, I wouldn't be stopping.
Yeah.
I'd be going back to get more. You know, so it's kind of like it's kind of a bad situation. Is these rehabs are so expensive, and these are people. You know, heroin addicts are people that, you know, when they get to the point where they want to get clean, they don't have $11,000 or $12,000. You know, and you know, insurance won't pay for it. You know, when I went, they told me that I wasn't bad enough, basically, for them to pay for it. You know, they said, well, you don't have any previous inpatient rehab, so we're not going to pay for you to go on for the first time. They wanted me to go to an outpatient rehab, which is basically every day you get in your car, you drive to you know, whatever place it is, and you go to group for the day, and, you know, they talk, and then you go home. You know, but that wasn't going to do me any good. You know, the point of being in rehab is getting out of your situation and being able to go somewhere for 30 or 60 or 90 days so you can have a head start on getting clean. You know, you're not going to get clean just continuing what you're doing. You know, you have to be able to kind of get out of your life, and you need to be able to go somewhere for a while so that you can get your head straight, and then, you know, once you have 30 or 60 days clean, you know, you have a better shot at staying clean, because now your head's on straight, you're not, you know, you don't have anything in your system, and you realize finally that you can actually feel good with no drugs in your system. You know, so by being away, it makes it easier, because, you know, when I went to a place in Florida, you know, I was there for like 6 months, and it made it easier. Number one, because I didn't know anyone there. You know, it makes it harder for you to get drugs because you're in another state, you know, which obviously that doesn't stop anybody, but on its own. But, you know, if you're actually trying, you know, then I can have a better shot by being in a place that I'm not familiar with.